The worst night of my life started with burnt coffee and a date who was already bored with me. Rain slammed against the diner window so hard it blurred the neon sign outside into red and blue streaks. Every time the front door opened, cold air rushed in and crawled down my neck. The fryer popped angrily in the back, like it had something personal against everyone in the room. The air smelled like hot oil and cheap coffee, with a weak hint of vanilla from the shake machine, trying and failing to make things better. Across from me, my date checked her phone again. The glow from the screen was brighter than her smile. "So you're a contractor?" she asked without looking up. "Structural," I said. She nodded like she didn't care. "That sounds unstable." I could have told her I stopped buildings from falling down. I could have explained how I read steel and concrete the way other people read novels. Instead, I took another sip of burnt coffee and felt the vinyl seat stick to my arms. This date was already dead. I had no interest in saving it. That was when the waitress walked up to our booth. She carried a black tray in one hand like it weighed nothing. She wore a white tank top and a black apron tied tight around her waist. Her dark hair was loose, falling over one shoulder like she hadn't had time to fix it. She set a sweating glass of ice water on the table, but she didn't look at my date. She looked at me. "If you wanted," she said, calm and clear, "I'd sit in your booth all night." It didn't sound cheesy. It didn't sound desperate. It sounded honest, like she was holding a door open and letting me decide. Her eyes were tired, sharp and warm all at once. My date scoffed and went back to her phone like the waitress hadn't spoken at all. My heart kicked hard in my chest, even though my brain told it to calm down. I opened my mouth to answer, not even sure what I was going to say. Then I heard it. A sharp crack above us, like someone snapping a board over their knee. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. I looked up. So did she. The ceiling let out a low groan. Wood complaining. Metal slipping. I knew that sound. It was the sound right before something heavy gives up. "Move," I said. I grabbed the edge of the table and shoved it sideways. I pulled my date out of the booth and pushed her toward the aisle, just as the ceiling buckled. Wet insulation and broken tiles crashed down onto the spot where we had been sitting seconds before. A light fixture swung, sparked, and went dark. People screamed. Plates shattered. Chairs scraped the floor. The waitress moved fast, faster than anyone else. "Front and back doors," she yelled. "Both sides, no phones. Just move." She guided an older woman toward the exit with one hand. Somehow, she still held her tray in the other, like she refused to drop anything someone trusted her with. Outside, the cold night hit us hard. Rain bounced off the parking lot as people huddled under the awning, coughing dust and arguing about what they saw. My heart pounded, but my eyes kept scanning the building. This wasn't bad luck. This had been coming. Water stains spread across the ceiling like old bruises. The worst damage was over the booths. That roof had been leaking for weeks, maybe longer. Across the street, a dark SUV sat idling with its headlights pointed straight at the diner. The waitress noticed it too. Her jaw tightened. "That him?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, not looking away. An older man from the corner booth stepped closer, still holding his rolled-up newspaper. "Vain," he muttered. "Developer. Predator." The waitress didn't react. She just squared her shoulders. I stepped back inside long enough to confirm what I already knew. The beam over the booths was swollen and soft, rotten from water. This place had been failing long before tonight. "No one goes back under that span," I said when I returned. "Not until it's braced." She nodded like she'd already decided to trust me. "What do you need?" she asked. "Anything straight," I said. "Mop handles, broomsticks, milk crates." We built ugly temporary supports out of whatever the diner could spare. It wasn't pretty, but it was enough to keep the rest from coming down. That was when the front door opened again. A man walked in like he owned the place. Clean jacket, clean boots, Clean hands. Elena, he said smoothly. So that was her name. She stood behind the counter now, chin up, shoulders squared. Get out, Greg, she said. He smiled like she'd invited him to sit. And as the ceiling creaked softly above us, I realized this night wasn't just about a bad date or a broken roof. Something much bigger was about to fall. Greg didn't leave right away. He stood there under the sagging ceiling like the place belonged to him, like cracked beams and dripping water were just decorations he hadn't approved yet. The rain tapped against the windows behind him, steady and patient. I heard there was an incident, he said smoothly. I'm concerned. I need you gone, Elena replied. His eyes slid past her and landed on me. They took in my wet boots, dirty jeans, and soaked hoodie like I was a problem line on a spreadsheet. And you are? He asked. Structural contractor, I said before he could guess wrong. His smile tightened. Then you understand liability. I understand rot, I said. And neglect. He didn't like that. Elena reached under the register and pulled out a metal cash box and a thick folder. The edges were worn soft, like they'd been handled during too many late nights. She dropped the folder on the counter and opened it. You already called the bank, she said. Not angry, just steady. I alerted them, Greg replied. They need to protect their investment. I'm not your investment, she said. He leaned closer. You need help. I need you out. That word help sounded like a trap, like a rope with teeth. I picked up a chunk of soaked insulation from the floor and squeezed it over the counter. Water poured out like a warning. This didn't happen tonight, I said. This roof has been failing for weeks. If you buy her debt, you buy this problem too. His jaw clenched. She needs capital, he said. I need control. Elena shot back. That was the moment I knew she wasn't looking for a savior. She was fighting to keep her ground. Greg laughed quietly. You have 30 days before they take this place. Then he walked out into the rain like he'd already won. The next morning I was back before sunrise. The diner looked tired in the gray light. One side of the neon sign was dark. Buckets sat under the worst drips inside. Elena stood behind the counter with her hair pulled back, flipping through her folder like sleep had been optional. You came back? She said. Yeah, I said. You make good cocoa. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. The inspector arrived with a clipboard and no interest in feelings. He tapped the stain beam, checked the grease trap, and listed problems like he was reading a grocery list. Temporary support stays, he said. Permanent repair needs permits and sign-off. Elena wrote everything down, no drama, just facts. Out back, the grease trap lid sat crooked, gasket cracked. The inspector gave her a look. If someone wants to shut you down, he said, they'll start here. She pulled out receipts, dates, signatures. Good, he said. Keep these close. When he left, she stood in the alley, hugging her folder, shoulders stiff. You okay? I asked. No, she said honestly. Then she took a breath. But I will be. That night, my crew rolled in with a flatbed and generators. We worked slow, listening to the building, lifting just enough to take the load without making things worse. Elena stayed the whole time. She made coffee, held flashlights, wrote down every cost on a yellow pad, never complained about the cold or the noise. Near midnight, when the ceiling finally stopped groaning, she handed me a mug. Real vanilla, she said, not from a machine. We climbed onto the flat roof over the kitchen. The town spread out quiet and wet around us. How long have you been holding this place up by yourself? I asked. Long enough, she said. I told her about sleeping in my truck for years. About saving so I'd never be trapped again. I need 15,000, she said softly. I know, I replied. The next day, the foreclosure notice arrived. 5 minutes later, Greg walked in, smiling. I can stop this, he said. You caused it, Elena replied. I flipped through the loan papers and found the cure clause. 30 days, I said. You pay, fix the issues, and keep the property. Quote. Greg laughed. You think you can pull that off? Elena didn't look at him. She looked at me. I took a slow breath. Tomorrow, I said, we go to the bank. With what? She asked. With your receipts, I said, and my cashier's check. The room went quiet. I wasn't just betting on a building anymore. I was betting on her. And I knew Greg Vane wasn't done yet. The bank smelled like paper and cold air. The kind of place where hope feels small the moment you walk in. Elena held her folder tight against her chest as we stepped up to the counter. I had the cashier's check tucked inside my jacket. It felt heavier than steel. The teller looked up and smiled at me. Morning, Silas. Then she noticed Elena. You must be Elena from the diner. Elena nodded once. Yes, ma'am. I slid the check onto the counter. We need to bring a loan current, I said. And stop a foreclosure. The teller's fingers paused on the keyboard. Before she could answer, the front doors swung open hard. Stop that transaction. Greg's voice carried across the lobby. Too loud, too sure. People turned to stare. The teller didn't. This payoff came first, she said calmly, and she's still inside her cure period. Greg slammed his hand on the counter. She can't afford repairs. This is pointless. Elena lifted her chin. I authorized the payoff. She signed without looking at me. Ink met paper. Decision locked in. Greg went quiet. Outside, the air felt lighter. Elena stared at the stamped letter like it might vanish. You just spent your savings, she said. Most of it, I replied, on our building. She looked up slowly. Our? We're partners, I said. 50-50. No traps. She read every page of the agreement that afternoon at a corner booth in the closed diner. Then she signed. 2 names, 1 line. The next 2 weeks were nothing but work. We tore out rotten beams, sistered new ones in, dropped fresh posts down to clean footings. The diner smelled like paint and coffee and effort. Elena ran the place like a job site. She chased inspectors, tracked receipts, and stood under the new ceiling every night, just breathing. One night, she kissed me hard and quick like tightening a bolt. Don't make it weird, she said. I won't, I promised. Reopening day felt like a test. People came back. They checked the ceiling. They stayed. By noon, the diner was alive again. Then Greg walked in. The room went quiet. You're still weak, he said. Elena stood in front of him. You're not welcome. No one laughed. No one left. Old Man Miller folded his paper and stared Greg down. Greg backed away. The bell rang as he left. That night, after closing, Elena handed me a ring of keys. For mornings when my hands are full, she said. And nights when I'm too tired. I closed my fingers around them. If you wanted, she said softly, I'd sit in your booth all night. This time I didn't hesitate. I kissed her slow and steady under a roof that finally held. And for the first time in a long time, nothing felt like it was about to fall. The first week after reopening was harder than fixing the roof. The danger wasn't falling beams anymore. It was money, habits, and exhaustion. The diner filled up in waves. Some mornings were packed. Others were quiet enough that the ticking wall clock felt loud. Elena tracked every dollar like it might try to escape if she looked away. I handled repairs during the day and paperwork at night. We crossed paths constantly, but rarely slowed down. We were partners first now. That mattered. Still, there were moments. Like the way she'd slide a mug of coffee toward me without asking. Or how she'd lean against the counter late at night and talk softly about recipes her mom used to make when this place was still hers. One evening I stayed late to fix a loose light above booth 3. Elena locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. You don't have to finish that tonight, she said. I want to, I replied. She watched me for a moment, then grabbed a rag and started wiping the counter even though it was already clean. You're not running, she said. I paused on the ladder. From what? From things getting real. I climbed down slowly. I don't run anymore. She nodded, like she was storing that answer somewhere important. The next morning, a letter was taped to the front door when we opened. Anonymous. Typed. No return address. Health department complaint. Structural concern. Noise violations. Elena read it once, then again. Her hands stayed steady, but I saw the tightness in her jaw. "He's not done," she said. "No," I agreed, "but neither are we." The inspector came back 2 days later. Different tone this time. Sharper, slower. He checked everything again. Ceiling, posts, kitchen. Grease trap. Elena handed over receipts before he even asked. He didn't smile, but he nodded. "You're clean," he said. "For now." After he left, Elena sank onto a stool behind the counter like her legs had finally given up. "He's trying to wear me down," she said. "He doesn't know you," I replied. That night, she didn't go home. We sat in the diner long after closing, lights low, booths empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows again, just like that first night. But the ceiling stayed quiet. "You know," she said, staring at the counter, "I almost sold to him last year." I didn't interrupt. I was tired, scared. I thought if I gave up control, at least I could breathe. She looked at me then, "And then you showed up on the worst date of your life." I smiled faintly. "You offered to sit in my booth." "I meant it," she said, even then. The silence between us felt warm instead of heavy. She reached for my hand first this time. "I don't know where this goes," she said. "I do," I answered. "It goes forward." She leaned in and rested her forehead against mine. No rush, no drama, just quiet closeness. Outside, a car idled across the street. We both noticed. Greg's SUV. He didn't come in. He just sat there, lights off, watching. Elena's hand tightened around mine. "Let him watch," I said. "This place doesn't fall anymore." She believed me, but I knew something else too. People like Greg don't stop when they lose. They wait. And they hit harder the next time. Greg made his move 2 days later. Not loud, not obvious. Quiet. The lunch rush had just started when the power went out. The lights cut. The grill died. The shake machine went silent mid-spin. A few customers gasped. One kid laughed like it was a game. Elena was already moving. "Everyone stay seated," she said. "Give us a minute." I headed for the back. The breaker panel was old but solid. Nothing tripped. This wasn't an accident. Out back, the alley smelled like wet concrete and oil. The utility box by the wall was open. A lock lay snapped on the ground. Someone had cut the feed. I took pictures with my phone. Timestamps, angles, proof. By the time I got back inside, Elena had comped coffee and calmed the room like she'd been doing this her whole life. The power came back 20 minutes later. Too clean, too fast. That night, the fire marshal showed up. Noise complaint. Then a zoning call. Then a surprise water inspection the next morning. Greg wasn't trying to shut us down in one hit. He was trying to bleed us dry. Elena stood at the counter after the third inspection in 4 days, staring at nothing. "I can't keep doing this," she said quietly. "Every day feels like I'm bracing for another crack." I stepped close. "You're not alone." She shook her head. "You already gave too much." Quote. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "What's that?" she asked. "A report," I said. "And leverage." I'd gone back through old permit records, ownership transfers, contractor filings. Greg's name showed up where it shouldn't have. Renovations signed off without inspections. Temporary fixes listed as permanent work. Corners cut. If this diner had been rotting from the top, his properties weren't much better. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about defense." She read the pages slowly. "You'd really go after him?" she asked. "I'd make him stop coming after you." That night, she slept in the booth again, not because of fear, because of trust. We lay there side by side, shoes off, lights dim, listening to the building settle. "I never planned on needing anyone," she whispered. "Neither did I said. In the morning, she made the call. Not to Greg, to a reporter. The story broke fast. A developer, a failing diner. Pressure tactics, questionable repairs. Greg's name hit the local news before lunch. By dinner, His SUV didn't show up. The diner stayed open. And for the first time in weeks, Elena smiled without forcing it. But peace never lasts without a final cost. I just didn't know yet who would pay it. Greg didn't come back. Not the next day. Not the day after that. The reporter called Elena twice for follow-ups. City inspectors showed up at 2 of Greg's other properties. One of them got shut down before lunch. Another got slapped with fines so big they made our repair bills look small. The pressure finally shifted. One quiet afternoon, while the diner hummed low with a few regulars, Elena leaned against the counter and let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her chest for years. "I think it's over," she said. "For him," I replied. "Yeah. For us, things were just beginning. Business didn't explode overnight. It didn't need to. It grew steady. Honest. The way strong things grow. People stopped looking up at the ceiling. They stopped asking questions. They came in for pancakes, coffee, and the feeling that this place was safe again." One night, after closing, Elena locked the door and turned off the neon sign. The diner went quiet except for the low hum of the fridge. She walked over and sat across from me in the same booth where everything had started. "You ever think about that night?" she asked. "All the time," I said. She smiled softly. "I almost didn't say anything to you. I'm glad you did." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I didn't offer to sit in your booth because I was flirting," she said. "I offered because I saw someone who looked as tired as I felt." I squeezed her fingers. "I saw someone standing in a building that was failing and refusing to fall with it." She laughed quietly. Then she stood, walked around the table and sat beside me instead. No ceiling creaked. No alarms went off. Nothing broke. She leaned her head on my shoulder like it had always belonged there. "You know," she said, "this place was supposed to save me." "It still can," I said. "Just not alone." Months later, we repainted the outside, fixed the sign, added a small plaque by the door with the reopening date. No big words, just proof. Some nights, after closing, we still sit in that booth. Coffee cooling, lights low, no emergencies, just 2 people under a roof that finally holds. And every time I look around that diner, I don't see a bad date or a broken ceiling anymore. I see the night everything almost fell apart. And the woman who chose to sit with me anyway.